TechRich TV is Peter Thiel of the Founders Fund, fresh off the stage. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
So congratulations on the announcement for the Thiel Fellowship. If I have this right, it's roughly $100,000 grants to 20 people under 20.
For 2 years of intense work in a science technology area that we will collaboratively figure out with them to do. And the basic idea is to try to figure out how we start building the great technological breakthroughs that will take our civilization to the next level. We think that things have been stalled out and that we need to somehow go back to some of the hard technologies, space, robotics, artificial intelligence, next generation biotech that will really make living standards better in the next 20 years.
Now, when you talk about the deficiency in great technological breakthroughs, what were some of the reasons behind that?
Well, you know, one high-level fact that's just very striking is that there's basically median hourly wages have not gone up since 1973 in the US. And that's a very strange fact when you compare that with, on the other hand, the sort of Silicon Valley story about computers and Moore's Law and the internet. I don't question that all these things have added tremendous value, but it still has had this effect that we've been like Alice in Wonderland, like running harder and harder just to stay in the same place, and we need to somehow get to a different place.
Now, when you're talking also about your breakthroughs that you want to see in this industry, are there particular sectors that you think are really lacking right now for some innovation?
Well, we think that all of the hard technologies that were sort of abandoned in the 60s are worth looking at again. So we think that it's basically space, robotics, artificial intelligence, next generation biotech. There are individual companies that we've seen around these areas. There are a lot of talented people looking at them. They're not being funded. No one's actually looking to invest. And so we think it's both a great investment and something that's going to be really good for the world.
Of that laundry list, you mentioned biotech, and that's been one of the hot rising sectors within Silicon Valley. You're an investor of Halcyon, which is, I mean, still kind of in a stealth mode of sorts, but you know, when you're looking at the biotech industry, do you see that as kind of the next major wave of Silicon? What will be its place?
By all rights, this should be the golden age of biotech. There's a lot of fundamental knowledge that's being gained about how biological systems work, and so there should be a lot of room for tremendous innovation in this area. I think at the same time, the reality is that it's been disturbingly stalled out over the last 20 years. There haven't been as many breakthrough drugs, and there's something about the way biotech companies are created that I think is too academic in orientation. So by the time someone's a fully tenured professor at a university, they often will have lost the kinds of skills that would make someone a great entrepreneur, and they may not be able to take or willing to take the kinds of big risks that lead to big breakthroughs. So I think biotech is very different from computer science, where people start these computer companies when they were 18, 19, 20 years old. We think maybe that's what you should look at biotech, is having people get involved in these companies at a much earlier stage rather than spending 8 years eating burnt popcorn in the grad school lounge.
So more like identifying the right entrepreneurs that aren't going to be of that stale academia environment?
I think it is identifying some people who are willing to take somewhat bigger risks on the science research in a sustained way over a number of years, and thereby hopefully build some of the breakthroughs that we need.
Yeah.
That's our guess. I mean, there obviously are a lot of people who disagree. A lot of people will try other kinds of approaches, but we wonder whether some of the kinds of things, the computers and internet sector have worked really well, and that's an area that's worked really well. And so the question is, can that sort of model be extended to some of these other sectors? And that's what we're looking at.
So you've been very concentrated on the high end of science when it comes to looking at the healthcare biotech field, but I've talked to some investors in the Valley who are looking more at the consumer end, and Aidan Senkett is an example. A few weeks ago, he talked about how he sees as the next great company, one potential is having a consumer healthcare site where a consumer is constantly going to a portal, you know, checking their health, tracking their health, managing it through that. What do you think on the consumer end?
I think the push towards personalized medicine is a very good idea, and I think this is definitely one of the areas where there's going to be tremendous growth. People are very interested in their health. It makes a lot of sense for people to be interested, and as medicine gets more personalized, I think getting the right computer and mobile cell phone interface will be a key product challenge to build. What we've decided to concentrate on is working on the sort of hard technologies behind it, that will really make this valuable, so that when you're actually going to that cell phone every day, that you're actually learning something that's really valuable. And that's sort of the part of the puzzle we've decided to concentrate on solving.
Before I let you go, Peter, I just want to ask you about the international picture and what you see is, all these emerging markets as they fully come into their own, whether that's China or Indonesia or parts in Eastern Europe. How are you approaching international investments, or how do you want to play that game?
We are focused on the U.S. Our venture fund is based in California. I have a somewhat contrarian view on this, where I think the emerging market countries are still so far behind the U.S. that all they actually have to do is copy. And so China, the per capita income in China is 7% of the U.S. All that China needs to do is copy and catch up.
Yeah.
And so the incentives are not really to try to do something new.
So you're not planning to have an outlet somewhere in Asia? All your offices you plan to still have in Silicon Valley?
Yes, we think that the Silicon Valley model has worked. We think the emerging market model has not worked. There probably are some countries where it should work by right, so maybe Scandinavia, Israel. There are places like that which are developed countries where you have a lot of talented people. Our network happens to be in Silicon Valley. That's where we think the most promising thing is. We think the VCs who have focused on China have made a very big mistake.
So are you saying underlying this is that China maybe isn't ready at this point? Do you see it shifting?
The challenge for China is to get into the 19th and 20th centuries, to get 19th century plumbing, 20th century railroads. That's where you have growth. The incentive is not to actually build the great new technologies, but that's something you have to do in the U.S. So if you ask what's the 20-year plan in China, it's to catch up to the U.S. What's the 20-year plan in the U.S.? It's to build great new technologies.
Great. Well, thank you so much. That actually has to be it. I've got to wrap up right now. But once again, my guest has been Peter Thiel, and he's of the Founders Fund. Right now, we're going to actually bring you guys to a segment that we did earlier today with John Doerr and Ben Gordon backstage.